Argus Media, this is Driving Discussions, a podcast series focusing on the forces that affect road fuels globally. Greetings and salutations once again. I'm Argus's U.S. Gulf Coast Blendstocks reporter Jason Metko, and on this edition of the series, we chat with our US Midcontinent reporter Zach Appel, focusing on the backwardation in the region's gasoline market and volatility within the Group 3 diesel market brought on by recent refinery outages. Zach, let's jump right into it here, talking first about the historically high RBOB premiums that we're seeing. Also, I understand we've had some wide variance in diesel cash differentials in the Great Plains. What's all that coming from?
Well, it seems to me from talking to people in the market that most of that is coming from refinery outages through the last year. Around September last year, we saw an outage in BP's, now Cinvos's, Toledo refinery, which produces about 160,000 barrels a day. And ordinarily, inventories coming into the high demand season for both diesel and RBOB would be much higher. But because of the prolonged outage, we've seen a downtick in those inventories, which has caused some shortage coming into the high demand season. And
speaking of high demand, we've got planting season, which has already started. I understand it started a little bit earlier too. How's that affected things?
Well, first off, we saw an increase in diesel demand way earlier than last year. Warming temperatures started in early April as opposed to late. And the first effect of that was basically a bottoming out of the demand for ultra-low sulfur kerosene, which is a blend stock for diesel they use for freezing temperatures. Just completely bottomed out. And really what that ended up in is really high arbitrages from the Gulf Coast and high prices in general for it. Now, we've seen a lot of Explorer product come up the pipeline since then, and has since closed that arbitrage, but we're seeing the dynamic reemerge in Chicago. Ordinarily, the Midcontinent draws a lot of product from there to meet their seasonal planting demand. This year, that's especially exacerbated because they already need to draw product from another region, and inventories are now lower than they ordinarily would be because of the prolonged refinery outages.
He is Zach Appel. He is our MidCon reporter. This is another episode of Driving Discussions. We've talked a little bit about diesel. Let's focus on gasoline. Are we seeing similar dynamics in gasoline than you just talked about with diesel?
Yeah. So the major increases in demand for both of those products is happening kind of at a similar time. We have the beginning of planting season, and we also have the beginning of the summer driving season. And for gasoline, the beginning of the summer driving season is signaled by a switch to lower formulation RVPs for both CBOB and RBOB. Now, RBOB and CBOB typically are on the same RVP, so they're the same formulation during the winter. But when it switches to summer, RBOB switches to a lower formulation, which makes it more expensive than CBOB. So naturally, usually we see a spread between the two grades emerge. But this year, that spread is much wider than in previous years. And in fact, for April, it's the widest we've seen since 2013. And this is odd because typically the RBOB-CBOB spread scales up as the season progresses, with it peaking in May or June.
A couple more questions here with Zach Appel as we talk the MidCon on Driving Discussions. I want to ask you real quick again about these refinery outages. We've had the one in Ohio that's been offline for quite a while. Do we have any sense of when these are going to get back to full steam?
We're hearing that the restart is in progress for Toledo. And that it may get started back in May, but remains to be seen.
Okay. Last one for you. Where do you see things going into the summertime?
Well, it depends on how quickly Toledo gets fixed. We're hearing from a lot of market participants that they're anticipating shortages throughout the summer for gasoline. Mostly that's going to stem from, the refinery outages, and, obviously there only being a very limited amount of product that can come up from Explorer to cover the shortages. But it's really dependent on when we're going to see Toledo restarting.
Zach, thanks for coming on. Hope you come back again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks much to Zach for coming on. And that'll do it for this episode of the Driving Discussions podcast series, a production of Argus Media. This reminder to check out our previous conversations, and for more information on Argus's global refined products coverage, please visit argusmedia.com/oil-products.